This is the second of 3 planned public informational meetings for roadway work that's going to be going on State Trunk Highway 35 from Front Street, which is down by the interstate, all the way up through Hudson and North Hudson up to North End Road. My name is Jeff Abramson. I'm a project manager with Ayers Associates. We're the engineering firm that's working for the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. We've got Brad Becker here with me. He's a sub-consultant of ours with CBS Squared. Mark Peterson is one of my design engineers. And we've got 2 Wisconsin DOT staff in the back. Mohammed is the DOT project manager, and Bill is his supervisor. So again, thank you. Please, if you have not signed in, please sign in on the sign-in form in the back. That makes sure that we get you on our mailing list if you didn't get a specific letter invite. We sent the letters out to people that actually own frontage or own property along the roadway. So that's how, or people that came to the last public meeting. So that's how we got you on your list. But please take a minute, if you haven't, at the end to sign the sign-in form, and there's comment sheets back there. Feel free to take a comment sheet. You can sign that and put it in the comment basket that's on the table, or you can take it home and get it to us. I think there's a date. We try to do it in the next month.
I know some people are confused about when things started, but there are people who think the meeting presentation is going to start at 5:30.
Well, trying to accommodate.
People back here complaining they're not starting until 5, and now we're complaining it's not starting until 5:30.
I'm not complaining, I'm just pointing out. Right. What's on the web.
Well,
Just saying something that might.
yeah, I know. Well, I apologize for the confusion. I should have bolded that or made it a little more clear in the letter. I'll get started. I'll keep going regardless, and if some people come in, I'll make sure I talk to them one-on-one afterwards. Again, I do want to thank you, though, for taking the time to come and talk about this project. It's a pretty big project for the city and for the state. We've got a little presentation we're going to go through, and then we've got exhibits around the room that you feel free to come up. Again, we're going to be here. We're here actually till 9 o'clock tonight. We're doing this presentation twice, so there's a meeting from 5 to 7, and then one from 7 to 9, and we're trying to get more. The 5 to 7, if you lived in Hudson, we were trying to get you to come to this one, and the North Hudson people to the next one, but it doesn't matter. It's the same presentation both times, so if you're from North Hudson, welcome. But anyway, we've got these long displays, they go around the back of the room here, the side and back. These are just plan view or aerials looking down at it with Front Street down by the interstates, just off this way, Front Street, going up through downtown, going up to the river, and then once you cross the river, you're in the village of Hudson. That's the back page. Then we've also got some displays of typical sections and a detour route. So, again, like I said, Mohammed is in the back of the room here. He's our Wisconsin DOT PM. Jeff, Mark, and Brad are here tonight to answer your questions. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about the project, an overview of the need for the project, what's being proposed, what traffic is going to look like during construction, a schedule, and then open it up for questions. So, I understand you're probably not going to be able to read this, but there is a copy in the handout. There are technically 5 projects out here, and most of it has to do with funding and the type of work that's going on. So, what we're calling the southerly project is this first board here, from Front Street up to Vine. So it goes through the heart of the downtown. Front Street to Vine. That is one project. I'm going to wait on that. Within that project, there's going to be an improvement project at the Cooley/Buckeye intersection. That's a different one of these IDs. That's the second one. Then we've got the next map, which is Vine up to the bridge. That's one project. And then the bridge up to Summers is the last project. And then if you were here at the first meeting, what has also happened since then is we've added this. Before, this project was going to end at Summers. Now it's actually going up to North End Road. It's about 850 feet. And there's being some work done on that stretch, and that's a some safety improvement dollars that got allocated for that, so that's its own project. So there's a lot of numbers and a lot of titles and names. There's really 5 projects, but it's broken into 3 main projects and then 2 little safety projects kind of scattered in there. So, need for the project. Obviously, the pavement's in rough condition out here. We've got issues with stormwater, aged utilities basically, stormwater, sanitary. Safety, curb ramps, we're trying to upgrade curb ramps to meet ADA standards. As I mentioned, the Cooley and Buckeye intersections had some crash history, some safety issues we're trying to address there. Substandard vertical clearance at the railroad, we gotta get 14.5 feet is what we want. Right now it's 13.10 roughly. So we gotta lower it a little bit under there for minimum standards. And then up at, like I said, between Summers and North End, there's been a lot of rear ends. There's a lot of people turning into the gas station, the restaurants, those type of things. So there's work that's gonna be done there, and I'll explain that when we get into the specifics on the project. But so the proposed project, what we're really proposing out here, the South project. Oh, yes.
I had a question on the last slide there.
Yep.
Are you guys going to be taking out some trees along the pavement
Yes,
area?
a lot of trees. Yep. At the last PM, we mentioned that too. You can see this tree is actually grown over the curb and gutter. A lot of it's humping up the sidewalk behind it too. So maybe I'll get into that as I go through what's happening on each project. I'm going to start on the South project. The typical section on the South project. So the typical section means kind of what the road looks like. So this South project, we are not planning on replacing the curb and gutter or the sidewalk that's out there. South project, from the beginning of the project at Vine up to the Cooley intersection, is a joint repair. That's concrete pavement right now. So we're going to go in and fix the bad joints. Then I mentioned there's some safety work at Cooley. I'll touch on that in the next slide here. And then from Cooley to Vine through the downtown, that's a coarse mill is what we call it. We're going to mill and then overlay. So that'll get a new driving surface, but it's not going to get all tore up. The sidewalk and curb and gutter are going to remain. So that first project, sidewalk and curb and gutter are in place, except for curb ramps, where we're going to improve the curb ramps to meet current standards. Another question?
I just thought you said you weren't going to do the curb, and now you just said you are.
No, did I say it wrong?
You had originally said Vine to Cooley, and you meant Front Street to Cooley.
I apologize. Front, there's a lot of names here. Front to Cooley, curb and gutter, sidewalk is in place, joint repair. That's it. Cooley, Buckeye to Vine, sidewalk, curb and gutter is in place. That's a mill and an overlay. Everywhere there's a curb ramp, we're going to improve it to current curb ramp standards. So that does require some sidewalk and a little curb and gutter at each of those locations. So that's kind of the exception.
When you say improve, what do you mean by it? Because there are already some ramping there.
Yeah, but to be ADA accessible, there's certain grades. It can't be more than roughly an 8%. And you gotta have these truncated domes, these yellow, bright yellow with you can feel them. I don't know what you call them. I guess a truncated dome warning field is what we call them on curb ramps. So those are getting put in, and then there's certain widths and slopes that curb ramps need to be that make it so people whether it's handicap accessible, I guess is what it comes down to.
Did you want questions during, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, I want to keep this pretty informal,
I thought that I saw in previous plans, plans for improved parking for pedestrian, that we'd have bump outs at the intersections downtown for
You
safety.
caught me. I was going to get to that, yes. No, you're right. That is one of the things I was going to bring up that's different from the last time. Last time we met, there are a couple, and that's what these displays here are. At a few of the intersections, we are putting what we call bump outs in the downtown. That is something new. That's something that the city of Hudson decided to do. So by doing that, that does require a little bit of sidewalk and curb and gutter work. But there's, Dave, how many are there in downtown? Is it two locations?
Wisconsin Street and Locust Street.
Wisconsin and Locust are the two.
Not at Vine?
Not at Vine. Wisconsin and Locust, and then once we get up to, in the next project, I'll talk about St. Croix. There's something going on at St. Croix too. Okay, so south project typical section remaining the same. Yep. No.
You're doing an overlay also, aren't you?
A mill and overlay.
No, an overlay from Front Street down to Cooley.
No, joint repair from Front Street to Cooley. Front to Cooley. It's concrete joints. Those joints, basically they get cut out and patched and fixed. So no overlay there. Yeah, the overlay is from Cooley, the Dairy Queen up to Vine. Okay. The next two projects, basically from Vine to the bridge, that's still within Hudson, and then the bridge up to the Summers, which is in North Hudson. Those two projects are classified as what we call reconstruct projects. Those are getting a whole new pavement structure. Okay, so those are getting tore up. New curb and gutter along those whole the whole length of those projects. Sidewalk to remain. Sidewalk's going to remain, except curb ramps that we're going to upgrade. There's also some driveways we're trying to improve the grade. Some driveways are kind of steep, you bottom out. So we'll be replacing some panels at curb ramps, some sidewalk, and then I haven't got into the utility part yet, but there's some utility work that's going to be going on out here, water and sanitary work, that's going to require laterals to people's homes. So those laterals will go up to the right-of-way line, but that requires a panel or two of sidewalk to be replaced. Yes?
From that stretch from Vine Street to Malibu, are you taking out all the trees, or are you just selectively taking a couple out?
No, it's the majority. It is the majority. The problem is, you know, we need a couple feet behind the curb in order to pour new curb and gutter with their machine that pours curb and gutter. And they are, I mean, they're beautiful trees, they're old beautiful trees, but they are, in order to fix the curb and the utilities, a lot of those are coming out. We are planning on, now correct me if I'm wrong, but we are planning on replacing or putting some new trees in at the end. That's always kind of been, I don't know the extent of that yet, we haven't gotten that far, but there were some plantings that were going to happen as part of this. So the typical section, which I mean by the roadway width on those northerly projects, those reconstruct projects, we are going to tear up the pavement and put new base down and a new pavement. The plan is that is going to be a concrete pavement. Right now it's asphalt with some underlying concrete in areas. So that will be a change. But the pavement design shows it with the traffic volumes out here that concrete is the most feasible.
Are you gonna deal with all the sidewalks that don't line up and
No.
ramps that go to access
W-
the
The sidewalks are,
pedestrian paths that don't go any place?
the sidewalks are, in general, like I said, are gonna remain in place except for curb ramps and where we need it for utilities and driveways. Now I want to, how I phrase this, there's the city of Hudson has asked us to, when we bid this project out, to bid it an alternate bid is what they call it. So when the contractor, our plans will show just removing those pieces of sidewalk that have to be replaced, and it ends up being almost half the sidewalk. When you start looking at curb ramps, all the stuff for the water and sanitary and some driveways, and the stuff that's busted because of some trees.
You taking out the carriage walks?
Yes, the plan is not to replace carriage walks. Carriage walks is that little piece of concrete from the back of curb up to the sidewalk in front of people's house. It's usually, 2-3 feet wide. Plan is not to put those carriage walks in or to replace them. Where was I? The city, they have asked us when we bid this project out to bid it two ways, two options. We'll have the contractor give us prices for doing the spot pieces of sidewalk, and then also an option to replace all the sidewalk within Hudson, within the reconstruct part of that Hudson project, which is Vine to the river. So there is a potential that sidewalk could be replaced, but right now tentatively it's just spot repair. But depending on how the costs come in, the city will make a determination if they want to go forward with that or not. So that's an unknown right now, so it could go either way.
Who's responsible for retaining walls?
Retaining walls we are not touching. Retaining walls are going to remain in place. I believe the retaining walls are city owned, or are they privately owned? Do we know?
Are they owned by the?
They're not owned by the DOT.
Mix.
It's a mix of private and city. We're not, again, the sidewalk is being, in general, it's going to, half of it will remain. We'll just replace panels. So the intent was not to get into retaining walls. And there's a lot of them out there. Yes.
My question is for residents that live along that area where you're doing the work,
Yes.
they're obviously not going to be able to access their driveways to get in and out to get home. So where are those vehicles going to be parked?
Sometimes, there will be times when, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but the way it's, we don't want the contractor to come in and open this whole thing up all at once. We want to have them staged in sections. So when they are working in front of your driveway, if they're pouring curb and gutter in front of your driveway, obviously you won't be able to get in until that curb cures. So there will be times, and also there's water and sanitary laterals that are going to be being put in, and storm sewer. So there's going to be some deep trenches out here. I mean, we do have to, try to provide you as best access we can for the people that live in here. This is going to be a detour route, but obviously the people that live in here have to get to your houses. So there is going to be some inconvenience. There may be times that you'll get, I think typically the contractor, if they're doing your driveway, they'll notify you if it's going to be, if they're pouring it that day, so you'll know that you'll have to park on a side street that night. Yes.
Let's be fair. 3 years ago, we went through the Vine Street project,
Yep.
and someone who had an office on Vine Street at that time, that hole was open for 3-4 weeks at a crack.
Yeah.
So from the standpoint, to be fair to these people, that they're gonna have to walk to their houses from, maybe walk away, something of that sort.
Yeah, this is not a minor project. This is a major project. There are major utilities going down 15, 20 feet deep. So those are big holes or trenches that get put out in the road. Obviously, we want to try to keep people to have a path through to get in and out. Luckily, there's a lot of parallel side streets for people that live here. But again, there is inconvenience associated with this. There's no doubt about it.
Jeff?
Yes.
If somebody has a question, please let me know, because I'll hand you the mic so you can talk. Because we can't do it. They're recording it, and
Oh, they're going to broadcast it, I think. Okay. Let me get back to my typical sections here. So one thing that is going to change a little bit on the middle project underneath the railroad overpass. There's 2 blocks in there. Right now, from Vine Street all the way up to the bridge, it's 40 foot wide face to face of curb. So it means you got a 12 foot driving lane. It'd be a 6 foot basically paved shoulder and 2 foot of gutter, curb and gutter. So that gives you 40 feet. So that's what's through most of the downtown area is 40 feet. 40 feet allows for a driving lane and then parallel parking, so on-street parking. From that segment from River Street, River Division to the bridge, those 2 blocks there, that is going to be narrowed up to a 36 foot. That's where those big retaining walls are. So by narrowing that up to the 36 foot, and the whole project from the bridge to the north is currently 36 feet wide. That's the same. But that 36 foot, basically that'll eliminate parking on those 2 blocks, but then that allows us to have on-street bikes through there, and it allows us to do some work on the profile underneath the railroad overpass. by narrowing it up, we can lower it a little bit and not get into all those walls.
Well, if I understand this, you're saying from Vine Street to the bridge, you will have on-street parallel parking?
No.
You mentioned parallel parking.
Yep. So from Vine Street, currently, today, from Vine Street to the bridge, parallel park. It's 40 feet wide, which accommodates parallel parking. What we're proposing is to change it. It'll go from Vine to River, which is 2 blocks short of the bridge. It will be the same as it is today. And then from River to the bridge, we're going to pull it in 2 feet on each side, which then eliminates parallel parking, but it allows us to have bicyclists on-street bike to get across the bridge. I've got a slide on bike and pedestrian coming up. I can talk about that a little more. And we really need that. What the driving factor is, we're lowering underneath that railroad overpass, we're lowering the road about a foot at the worst case, 0 inches down to a foot. And to lower that, if we move it in 2 feet on each side and lower it, we can get rid of that vertical between then the back of curb and the sidewalk. Because right now the sidewalk is butted up tight to the back of curb. If we pull it away 2 feet, then we'll have room to put a slope in there. So the sidewalks will remain, those retaining walls will remain. And one of the big reasons is the bike accommodations. There's on-street bike that's going to be in the middle, going through downtown with parking. You can't have bikes. There's no room for bike accommodations. So the plan is to take bikes down Buckeye, have on-street bike accommodations on Buckeye, and then all the way past the park or all the way on First Street. And then River is the last one that comes back out. So then bicyclists will be accommodated on street from Buckeye all the way up to River. And when they come back on to 35 at River, then the typical section of 35 will handle bike accommodations all the way to the north then. It's either to accommodate bikes through your downtown, you either got to give up your parking on one side, because there's not enough width there with just everything that's there. There's not enough width to have parallel parking and bike, safely have bike accommodations. So that's a driving factor.
There is a way to get through by the path in the park. in the park.
Yep. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I apologize. If you have a question, he'll give you the mic, just so I don't know if people are listening to this live or if it's recorded or what. But and then the north project, the one that's been added since we previously were here. Right now, that's a 2-lane rural section, so it means it's just got gravel shoulders. We are going to widen that project to make it a 3-lane, and I'll show that typical here. So from Summers Street to North End Road, it's 830 some feet. Summers to North End Road, what we are doing, we're widening to the side of the gas station, the restaurant, all that. As you're driving north, the left side will stay the same. The right side's getting widened to the right, to the east. And we're adding width in order to provide what we call a 2-way left turn lane, or a twiddle. That'll become a 3-lane section, 1 lane each direction, and that middle lane will be for left turners. There's been a lot of rear end crashes up there, and that's the safety improvement, is to make that 2-way left turn lane to try to reduce those rear end crashes. So that's a change from what you see today. These are just depictions, and we can look at these one-on-one, but typically, we've either got a 36 or a 40 foot. In the 40-foot version, you've got 6 foot of extra width plus your 2-foot gutter. It gives you an 8 foot for parking, and then your existing sidewalks. And like I said, when it's 36, when we go underneath the railroad overpass, if you kind of picture the railroad overpass up above here, it'll be a 12-foot lane, a 4-foot that will accommodate bikes, your curb and gutter, and then a slope up to the existing sidewalk. That's where we can get rid of that vertical change that we have to do to get our clearance under the railroad. Again, this is just a summary of what I kind of jumped ahead because we're kind of all over the place, but the summary of what's happening on the rehabilitation, just again, joint repair for the south half of the first project, and then a mill and overlay. doing safety improvements at Buckeye, doing curb ramps. On the south project,
Can you explain what you're talking about in terms of safety improvements at Buckeye?
Yep. I will. How about another slide or two? I got a slide specifically for that. One thing I probably haven't mentioned yet, on the south project, there is some on the south project down by your wastewater treatment plant, the city is going to be doing some repair or replacement of some sanitary, I don't know if it's sanitary main, I guess you'd probably call it, main trunk line down there. So there is a portion, one, I believe it's in the northbound lanes. This is actually 4 lanes down here, but the rightmost lane is going to be a trench, replacing some new sanitary lines down there. And then, like I mentioned, water and sanitary north of Vine the whole way. But down on this end, there will be some sanitary work. And that'll require us to flop some traffic back and forth staging. And I'll get into the staging here in a second. Here is, I realize it's probably hard to see, but really what's happening at Cooley and Buckeye, there's some safety concerns here. There's a northbound, a right turn lane in front of the Dairy Queen. That right turn lane is going to get extended back, so we're going to add length to that, some storage and length to that right turn lane. And right now at that intersection, it's hard to see here, but there's some existing islands out in the middle of this, okay? Some channelizing islands. Those 2 islands are getting removed, and what that does, that allows us, this southbound left turn and northbound left turn, it allows us to line up those left turns more straight across from each other. Right now they're offset because of those islands. So when we remove those islands, we can line up those left turn lanes, and it's a lot safer when you're making a left and somebody in front, the other person making a left is straight in front of you. If you're offset, it's a bigger safety concern. So that's the main safety improvement there, is to realign those left turns so they're opposing. And then, like I said, adding some length to that right turn lane. Yes. Oh, good job.
Will there still be just one northbound lane then?
Correct.
There
Yep.
at the Dairy
The
Queen?
lane configuration will be a right turn lane, a through lane, and a left turn lane. Same as there is today. It's just by us removing those median islands out in the middle there, we can line things up better and make it a safer functioning intersection.
Is there any thought of putting some signage further on down the road towards the sewage plant that identifies left, center, and right turns? Because what happens, people coming down that left-hand lane where it's 2 lanes, they're barreling down there, there's a backup of cars to go straight ahead, and all of a sudden they find themselves in a left-hand turn lane, and then they're all cutting in.
I don't know if we
And
talked
quite
about,
honestly, sometimes I don't think people
Yeah.
realize that they're in that left lane and it's gonna be a left-hand turn lane.
there's an overhead sign support for people coming south. There's a big overhead truss that shows the lanes over by the, over in this area as you're coming south. I don't know if that's a big grocery or, there's a big truss overhanging that's got line, but I know you're talking about coming north. Yep. So coming north, we can look at, that's part of what we have to do is the signing, looking at the signing and marking. So it's probably going to be ground mounted, but it'll, delineate what the 3 lanes are. Yep.
It's not very clear right now.
Somebody had another question I missed.
I was just going to say you cleared it up because obviously when you redo that and those streets are lined up together,
Yeah.
then people are going to be like, oh yeah, I can go straight ahead here, or they're going to know where they can go. Whereas now
It's gonna make
if
things a lot-
if you're coming new into town, it's very confusing.
It's going to make things a lot cleaner when those lefts are lined up and the through lanes are lined up. Everything will be straight. But I know what you're saying, because you're coming from a 2 lane, and all of a sudden, if you could get trapped in that middle lane, you could be trapped in a left turn lane.
Or they go straight in the right turn lane.
Yeah, that too. We got somebody back here that's got the mic. Yeah.
I don't know if you are also in charge of the signal lights, but there is no left turn light as you're heading north.
No left
Down.
turn arrow?
No left turn arrow.
Okay.
What they do is one side gets green and straight and left go.
As part of this project, and that's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, but We are replacing the traffic signals at Cooley and Monroe. Those two streets are getting new and upgraded signals. We haven't gotten through and doing the signal timing and the phasing yet on them. Sometimes what you're saying happens because those offsets are, those lefts are offset. It's hard to get them to go at the same time. When they're lined up, you can get them to go at the same time easier. So it might fix itself. I don't know what the timing is going to be on those yet, or the configuration. But I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, there's no left turn signal.
Northbound left arrow.
When you're going north, down by the Dairy Queen.
Okay. Somebody up here.
On the map over here, it looked like you're revising the sidewalk on the southwest corner of Buckeye.
Right here?
Oh,
Southwest, I'm sorry.
That's
Sorry.
a really, really, really bad corner for bicycles. It's impossible for bicycles, and that is a bike traffic lane. So two things. One, it kind of looks like you're cutting it a little bit,
So
it isn't going to be a 90.
Right now, you are correct. I didn't mention that. There's about 200 feet from here back where the sidewalk does have a boulevard. Once you get past the marina, there's a green space between the curb and gutter and sidewalk. And once you get up here, that sidewalk dives in and falls right up behind the curb around here. And we are going to pull that away for that couple hundred feet to line that up, or to give a boulevard and improve the safety there. And what's that? What widen?
Are you gonna make the sidewalk wider there?
Maybe.
That's a heavily traveled bicycle path right now.
Maybe.
Yeah.
What's that? Wait.
If you did that, because it's a dream that the rest of that sidewalk all the way to the bridge gets
We're looking at some
widened.
options with the city to maybe making that a wider 8-foot path. I don't want to commit to that right now because I don't know if it's going to happen yet or not. At a minimum, we're going to pull the sidewalk away so it's not right up tight to the back curb. But there's an option where we may, instead of having that 5-foot sidewalk, make it an 8-foot wide paved path.
Is the, well, you don't
But-
want signal light construction,
Yeah.
that's one of the issues, signal.
Pole right there, yeah. And that's why we want to get that sidewalk away from that intersection. There's too much stuff in that corner too. But there is an option that we're talking with the city on of making that a wider paved path that could then accommodate bicyclists better, bike and peds.
I'm more or less, I don't really have a question about the project itself. I know you said that on that intersection, at one time you guys had looked at putting a roundabout there, but the cost-wise and the space-wise, it didn't work. And I was talking to a coworker of mine about this. The roundabouts that I've seen, I lived in England for 4 years, so I'm familiar with the roundabouts. But when you go up to one of the roundabouts here, I've noticed that there's a sign
bend you
there and it
around.
says you can turn right, or they got an arrow going left. Well, nobody would ever go left in a roundabout, so why don't you make two things, arrows going right? And it's like this detour for the work they're doing down there by the frontage road in 94. You're going up across the 94 bridge, and there's an arrow that's going to the right for the detour, and if you go right, once you get across that exit, you're going to go into Bayport, and you need to turn left. So, like, why isn't the arrow just straight ahead, that one lane? So I don't know who does the signage when you guys have detours and projects, but I think that needs to be worked on a little better.
I'll just say, I don't know about the roundabout, what the history is out here, what was looked at. I'm guessing when they looked at this, this part of this HSI, this study for the safety money, they probably investigated a roundabout. I don't know the history on that. I know what you're talking about on that sign, and if you look, there's usually a dot on that sign with the left arrow. It means you're supposed to go around the roundabout.
Who's gonna look at that sign and know that?
Well.
Everybody knows you have to turn right, but you got an arrow going left. It's just
No,
crazy.
yeah,
Two arrows
yeah.
going right. and-
It's an educational process, I know, yeah. It's just,
Probably somebody decided that it's gonna be
Yeah.
that way, and that's.
and anyway, we're not proposing a roundabout here. Summary of the next projects we talked about. New utilities means storm sewer, water, and sanitary from Vine all the way to the north. That means new curb and gutter. That means existing sidewalk, except, same scenario, except curb ramps, except some driveways, and except where water and sanitary impacts it. I talked about the change in the width from the river up to the bridge, narrowing it up 2 feet. Talked about tree removal. There is going to be a lot of tree removal that's going to be required out here, so it's required. I mean, we can't do a project like this without it.
I get that, I'm gonna talk loud. But when you remove these trees, can you do something with that wonderful wood besides ground it up and make it into mulch? Can't you, aren't there forestry people or something that can use that wood?
No, I don't know.
Process it?
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, normally when we have a project, the contractor is responsible to get rid of the wood. I don't know what they necessarily do with it. I don't know, have you guys ever done anything else at the DOT with?
Up in Ashland, I know we did Ellis, I don't know, the contractor sold it to an artist that used it, he did chainsaws and that kind of stuff with them.
It's probably up to the contractor. I mean, if it's good wood, they're not gonna, I mean, it's a waste to throw it, obviously, yeah. So hopefully, you know, but again, it's not something that we usually direct them what to do with it. One thing I didn't mention is on the bridge itself, there's what we call a polymer overlay that's going to be put on the bridge, which is kind of like a rough epoxy coating, kind of. But it's more of a preventive maintenance type treatment on the bridge. We talked about then the final project, which is that project from Summers to North End. The roadway will be widened to the east. It's going to go from a 2-lane to a 3-lane twiddle. When we do that, we are planning on putting curb and gutter on the right side or east side. It'll stay a rural section on one side, but it'll have curb and gutter on the right.
Will it have a sidewalk?
No sidewalk. Just what we're calling an urban typical section, which is the curb and gutter. And then that road will be milled and overlaid, that section. I mean, the widening will be new construction, obviously, but the existing will get milled up, and then we'll pave it all together, so then we can stripe it and it'll look right, you know, which lanes are designated what. But the existing lanes will get a mill and overlay, and then the widening will be new pavement, new construction. Yes?
I'll talk loud again. Is there any chance that funding may change before this all starts, and you might be able to address some sidewalks?
You know, I don't, you know, funding is, I would say there's always a change. It could go up, it could go down. It could be eliminated, it could be, you know, I don't know. It's kind of always, you know, it's funded right now. So I would, you know, Bill, I guess from your standpoint, once it's funded, it's funded. I don't know if you very rarely make changes to that funding, I guess, unless somehow the state of Wisconsin won the Powerball maybe, and I don't know, you know. But I would guess it's probably set where it's at.
I heard that transportation, like roadways was one of the areas they were going to be addressing.
Yep, it is supposedly going to be, yep. Yep. You know, but you know, right now there's a budget out there that has, from the governor, that has improved funding for roadways, but again, that, you know, realistically, that's probably a year before that thing will get.
What's your let date for it?
For this project? Yeah, the question was, what is our let date? Letting means when will it be bid out to the contractor? What we call our final plans and special PS&E package, or specials and plans and estimate, are due May of 20, and then it'll be constructed in 21. So bike and pedestrian, we've kind of touched on this, but you know, from the south, from the interstate, bike and pedestrian are on the path past the marina. Once they get to Buckeye, it'll be on-street bike up first by the park, on-street at River to get you back out to 35, and then on-street underneath the railroad overpass all the way to North Hudson. Yes?
How are you going to designate that? Is it going to be Cheryl's, or how are you going to say this is a bike?
I don't know, I assume it will be signed. I don't know, I haven't talked with the city specifically about that yet. but typically I don't think there's any signing out there today that I know of.
Because although Second Street isn't ideal,
Yeah.
that route's not particularly ideal either. There's a lot of traffic, a lot of business
And
at the
it really
restaurants.
comes down to room, obviously you'd have to give up parking in order to get bicyclists through the downtown area. And we don't want to do that. But so we'll have to look at signing. I would suspect we'll do some type of a placard or signing for it, typical bike route sign. Where am I at here? Maintenance of traffic, which means what's going to happen to traffic during construction. South project, we are planning on bi-directional traffic. Okay? Means half at a time, flipping traffic. There's kind of a picture. Right now you've got enough width that we could flip traffic, it won't build a park, but we'll be driving bi-directional through there and paving one side, flipping the other. Same down on the south end, like as I mentioned, there's some utilities are getting put in. We'll have bi-directional traffic down here to get traffic through.
Do you have some idea that, improving those curbs at the corners?
Curb ramps.
Curb ramps, yeah. That, I don't think that's necessarily going to be a big disruption.
No, it shouldn't be.
But, so once that, I assume that all gets done before you do the paving.
Yes, yeah, because we'll pave up to the curb then.
What are you thinking is going to be a typical time to get the paving done from the Dairy Queen up to Vine?
Dairy Queen to Vine is just a mill and overlay, basically. It's a coarse grain mill and overlay. That's probably, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 or 5 blocks. 5 blocks. You're probably looking at I want to make sure I don't overcommit, but you're probably talking a month. Because you got pedestrian, the curb work, or you're saying without the curb? They'll mill that in probably a day or 2 days, they'll have it all milled. Yeah, that part will go quick. And the paving will only take a few days, but you gotta remember there's a couple bump outs that are being put in there too. I haven't even mentioned this yet, but there's also some lighting work. City's gonna be replacing, there's some existing street lighting there, and we're looking at replacing some of that lighting, so there's some electrical or some lighting work that'll happen. The actual work on the roadway itself will go pretty quick down there. It's gonna be longer down here because we got this some sanitary sewer that has to get put in, so that's gonna take longer on that end. But through your downtown from Cooley to Vine will be a relatively quick process. Northerly projects. It is gonna be closed to There's a detour road. That's this thing here. It's gonna take Vine over to A to E. So it's not a short route, but it is gonna be the signed detour route.
I hope we don't do Vine Street.
So, obviously, we have to get, people that live in here have to be able to get in here, but we don't want the through traffic going through here. You gotta remember, as I mentioned, there's gonna be some deep excavations going on in here for water, sanitary, and storm sewer. So there's gonna be a lot of disruption of the road core itself. Two people.
What's the time frame? Do you know that detour will take? And then do you know how long it will take to take that detour? But how long will that be closed?
I don't know the timing on the detour. I have not driven it. I know it's a ways. I don't know if Brad, do you know how many miles it is? Okay. I know it's a ways.
Explain it again, where the detour goes.
Down the line, so double U.
Vine is also WUU.
Highway 12 coming up, and then, which is Highway A. So Highway A to the north, and then
E.
Highway E going west. So A to E, and then the 35 back down.
Jeff,
Yes.
you'll have those details at the next
Yep, yep. I mean, yeah, as far as I can figure out, or we can figure out what the timing and the exact mileage is, but that's really the only detour road. You know, this is a state system. We can't force the traffic on the city streets and town roads. So these are county highways. That'll be the official signed detour route. Yes?
Will there be any signage like coming from Minnesota where they could go up and across the new bridge?
We typically won't sign in Minnesota, but once you're on 35, we could we'll sign for southbound people before you get to E. You know, as you're heading south on 35, before you get to E, we'll have it signed to say detour route. You know, you gotta take E to get around. So yeah, it'll be signed from, that's how, you know, we won't actually go into Minnesota and sign it, but 35 itself will be signed for people heading south or north. But
Why
you
does
follow?
the Malibu Bridge have to be closed?
Well, again, there is some work being done on the bridge. It's not, that's not a lot. I mean, there, you know, that polymer overlay. The bigger concern is, I'll be honest with you, safety. And it's because we don't want traffic going through the work zone. Because, like I said, we are going to have 15 to 18 foot deep holes where this sanitary is going in. So, and when you dig that deep, it's not straight up and down, it's wider. And we just don't want, for public traveling safety, we don't want people driving through this. It's not a good situation. So it is going to be closed. It'll be barricaded off. You know, if emergency vehicles have to get across, they'll be able to move the barricades. But we want to go with the signed detour route to get people out of that area. We want to get, you know, this is going to be the majority of the summer. There's that water and sanitary and storm work that takes a while. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I haven't done an exact break. I haven't broken it down to the day or anything yet by the weeks, but it is going to be it'll be a full construction season with all the work that's going on out here.
You feel a walk across it?
I don't know. I guess we haven't talked about that. There's sidewalks on it. I don't know. Typically when it's closed to pedestrian traffic as well. Technically the sidewalks are going to be closed because I would say no, you won't be able to walk across it. The sidewalks are technically going to be closed because we're replacing sidewalk and doing, you know, the connections to the people's houses and all that. So sidewalks will have to be closed. So I would assume that we'll keep the whole thing closed, the sidewalk.
How about east to west traffic going across 35, like going over?
Yep, you'll be able to, well, unless there's, you know, on a particular day, if there's a trench going across, you know, typically, I mean, and that's where a lot of people are going to have to drive east and west to be able to get to the parallel back streets, you know, in front of their houses. So, you know, we have to provide people have to be able to get into their homes. So that means a lot of those side crossings will have to be open. It may not be all of them. There may be some that are closed because you've got utility work going on in the intersection, but you may have to go up or back a block to do it. But yep, sorry.
I'm sorry, I'm backing up to my previous question.
Okay.
So people are going to come across the 94 bridge if they want to go north, and they're going to go through town to Vine Street?
Yep.
And then get detoured east all the way up to County Road E to come down
Yes.
into North Hudson.
Yep.
But we can't put any type of detour up 95 to just cross over the new bridge?
In Minnesota?
Yeah.
No. Well, I'll let Bill talk about that.
I know we had discussions with Minnesota DOT about doing that. I'm not sure where those ended up, but I'm assuming, and I just got onto this project a couple weeks ago, so I'm not super up to date on it. But I'm assuming that if we have this signed detour, that for some reason Minnesota wasn't allowing us to sign that route.
You know, I mean, you all know live out here, so you know the streets to get around and stuff, but we have to do an official signed detour route especially for people that aren't familiar with the area. And again, it's got to be at the county level or higher, so county roads, so, yes.
Well, so people coming from Minnesota, why wouldn't they tell them, don't get off downtown, go up to the exit 2 and already take that road? Why would they snake through downtown just to go up Vine and drive up to that same road anyway?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends on where they're going. I mean, you don't want to keep them from coming into your downtown businesses either, you know. We don't want to discourage them from there. I guess if they're going through all the way, yeah, you're right, it'd be better to stay on the Minnesota side and cross.
No, I'm saying you're coming across from Minnesota, go up to like where the grocery store is. Carmichael.
Oh, yeah.
Go up there and then cut across. Why?
You could, yeah, you could.
Yeah. It'd just be so much
It's,
quicker.
yeah.
For the people going.
I mean, you know, I got a bunch of people, yeah.
Either one.
Because that's where that road goes anyway.
Yeah, you know, Cooley, you know, kind of bends around and ultimately goes up to Carmichael too. But again, that's not a county highway level, that's a town road, so we didn't want to put traffic on that. Yep.
I have a question.
I don't know if, okay, I have a question regarding, you were talking about the storm sewer, and I assume that's further south, closer to 94, correct?
No.
No, you're talking about
Sanitary sewer.
the sanitary, I'm sorry, not
Yes, down by the
storm.
wastewater treatment plant.
So
yeah.
that sanitary sewer, what's the, that's all going to be mill and overlay on that area too, except for some improvements?
Except for where we tear it up because of the sanitary sewer. Yes, it is concrete. Yeah. So there's going to be one lane, basically probably one lane in front of the treatment plant, and I don't know, how far up does it go, Dave? All the?
It's 2 lanes and it goes, there's a...
Well, I mean, your stuff is in the outermost lane, but we may end up impacting some of the other lane because of the trenching and.
Yeah, but it goes from front to there's a large white sign on the east side of the road.
Okay, up here.
No, further south.
This one?
Right there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's up through here up to that.
So that section of road,
So there will be some new pavement in there, even though it's a joint repair, some of that's gonna get tore out because we have to tear it out to get the sanitary in. Concrete, no. We'll rip out what's there, do the sanitary work, repave it with concrete.
and what's the guesstimated time frame for that?
Now, Dave, do you know how many feet
That
you're
it'll be
talking?
closed, that you're...
This is work that the city is developing.
Yeah, just to be clear, that area is not...
We're not closed, but I mean,
Yep,
we'll do
yep.
One lane.
Yeah, well, right now it's 4 lanes, it'll be down to 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, so you'll be able to get through there.
That sanitary is very deep and it's a large diameter, I think it's a 24-inch pipe, so we're probably talking, I would say at least a month in that area, plus putting the road back together, so it'll be a pretty substantial.
So it could be pushing
But that,
2
again,
months,
you
yeah.
have 1 lane northbound, 1 lane
Yeah.
southbound on the west side.
Yeah. So you'll be able to get through there, it's just, it'll be 1 lane each way. Was there another question somewhere?
Yeah. Are you going to be talking about those sidewalks at the next session?
What side?
Sidewalks going down to the bridge?
What about them, I guess?
Oh, that's not my question.
Oh, my-
They're sloped and they kind of, that's his question. He's gonna-
Okay. In general, yeah, I'm going to hopefully talk about everything I talked about at this presentation, we talked about at the next one. It's supposed to be the same. We get off track once in a while, but in general. Schedule. So we had our first PIM back in September of 18. Our environmental document, we're trying to get that wrapped up and signed by this summer. Right now we're in April of 2019, our second PIM. We've got a preliminary right-of-way plat, and that is because by doing some of these, it's one thing I kind of missed, I apologize, real estate acquisition. We are going to have to get some temporary easements at some of these curb ramps to do the grading, to blend the curb ramps into people's yards. So we do have some temporary easements that we're looking at curb ramps. And I don't know if there's any other areas. It's mainly easements, but...
Driveways.
Oh, and maybe some driveways, yeah. Like I said, we are trying to fix some of the slope on some driveways, so that may mean we have to go back a few feet to blend it in. And again, if we mess up, or not mess up, if we impact a driveway, we have to fix it. So if you have a concrete driveway, we'd have to put concrete back. If it's asphalt, we have to put asphalt. But in general, the real estate acquisition is going to be on the corners of the intersections for those curb ramps, and we're going to try to do it all with temporary easements. So it should be relatively minor from that aspect. I mentioned earlier, this is the second of 3 planned ones. There's no fixed date on it, but we're probably planning end of this year, so basically January of 20, having a final PIM at that point. We'll have a lot of the final details. We're probably at that 50 to 60%, where we've got what we call a 60% plan developed right now. But again, there's a lot of tweaks that'll still happen, and a lot of the details will get finalized now. Yes?
Are the sections of the project going to be done in sequential order, or are they all going to be done kind of at the same time? Or?
No, and again, that's something we haven't figured out as far as when. The intent was to always not have this whole thing tore up at once. We wanted to have it done in segments. Again, the south project is a lot shorter time period. It's going to take the longest to do the final, from vine to the end, are the longest projects, longest duration projects. So those will probably start early and end late. And then the project from front to vine will probably go sometime in the middle when one of those other ones is going. Just the way it works. And we haven't gotten into those details, but we've talked about it. We may try to put some restrictions on the contractor that they can only have so much tore up at a time. Some of it's hard to do because of connections of water and sanitary and storm and how that all works. So we have to keep those facilities open to people too. But yeah, we don't want the contractor tearing up 2 miles of this all at once, if we can help it.
I have one question.
Yes.
So you're not going to, I'll talk loud. So you're not going to do things in order from south to north. You're going to do it kind of maybe here and there. And then what do you estimate the project to go from 2021 till when? How long of a period?
2021.
Pardon me?
It's one summer.
Just so.
Yep.
2021.
Summer of 21.
Start completed.
Start and finish in summer of 21.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Right. And as far as the timing sequence, we don't know that yet. A lot of that's up to the contractor, how they want to stage their operations. But again, we can look at putting some restrictions on them too. More restrictions we put on them, the more the price tag goes up, but it helps, the inconvenience of people. We want to be able to try not to have this whole thing tore up at once, so.
Good question.
Yeah.
So where those bump outs are there going to be lights going in there too then? That's going to back up traffic crazy. When somebody's trying to make a left-hand turn right now, you can go around them, keep going. That's going to get backed up.
You mean traffic signal lights?
Yeah,
Signals or lights? No, we're not planning on putting any new traffic signals in, except, like I said, there's 2 locations where we're replacing existing traffic signals.
That's going to slow them going through downtown.
That's a good idea.
Incredibly.
Yeah. But that's, some of that, bump outs are what they call a traffic calming. It is.
Stopping.
Yeah. I mean, that's, in a downtown business district, we don't want people flying through here either. Yeah, the bump outs are something that the city's.
What's a bump out?
So you've got parking, you've got your curb and gutter downtown where everybody parks, and when you get up to the intersections, it kind of bulbs out a little bit. So it keeps people from parking right up close to the intersection. It pushes them back a little bit.
Line of sight.
Yeah.
So right now, when somebody's taking a left, you won't be able to go around them to the right. You'll have to sit behind them until they can go. So it's going to back everybody up, wait for somebody left-hand turn, going either way.
I think the other thing that it does, because I've seen it happen downtown, is traffic going north or south, okay, and your car is behind somebody, and you want to go straight ahead, and they're trying to make that left turn. So a lot of people, they'll turn out right and go straight ahead, and it's going to prevent that. Unfortunately, it's going to kind of jam traffic up a little bit. But typically on those intersections, when you have pedestrians out there, it really is a safety issue.
That's
And
what I was
as
just
a
gonna say,
driver, you
know,
really
it-
got to pay
It
attention.
really, it shortens up, obviously, it shortens up the distance that pedestrians have to cross at the intersections. So that's, I'll be honest with you, that's the main benefit. No, that's a big benefit.
Through there, if
Yeah.
a pedestrian were to walk out, because they shouldn't be walking out because of the light.
Yeah,
if
but-
they were-
But there's no traffic signal there.
They're gonna bump it out, put a light in it.
Oh, that's right.
It's gonna get backed up incredibly, because it already does.
Okay.
Well, myself and another member of the city staff did an evaluation of the sidewalks and the crosswalks and everything in Second and Third and First Street. And if you actually don't notice this unless you're paying attention to it, but I happen to notice that you can't see the cars when you're at a corner to know if you can safely cross the street, if you have a light or if you don't have a light. And people do pull into the right lane when it's really should be, it's not even a lane.
It's the parking is what it is. People, if
And
there's,
they'll make a right-hand turn right into whoever. So what those bump outs do is give pedestrians a chance to be able to see what's coming as far as traffic is concerned.
Understood, I'm just saying it's gonna slow the whole traffic
Yeah.
big time.
And they should have one more, they should have one down by San Pedro's, but they're not going to.
Wrapping up on the schedule, our final plans are due May of '20. That's when our major submittal is to the DOT, and then it'll be bid out. I think it's in November. I think it's November let. And then construction in the summer of '21. So, any questions? I know we've answered a lot, talked a lot, but, and we are gonna be here, one second, we are gonna be here till, so we can go one-on-one with you afterwards if you'd like. Yep.
You probably already answered this, I just didn't get it. I now understand what a bump out is. What intersections are you putting in bump outs in?
Locust in Wisconsin. And one thing I forgot, I apologize, Locust, Wisconsin, St. Croix. St. Croix, we are putting what we're calling a pedestrian refuge. So it's like an island, safety zone in the middle. So that's a pretty big pedestrian crossing there. So it's almost like a school crossing, but there'll be an island out in the middle, a long parallel skinny island that'll basically cut the distance in half so people can walk across half and then walk across the other half. So that is something I forgot to mention, I apologize, but that's happening at St. Croix. Yes?
Is the state paying for this, or will people along there get assessed for curbs and gutters and all that?
Some of both. The state's paying for the main project on Highway 35. The city is doing their water and sanitary. And I guess I don't want to speak for the city. I don't know how the city assess, but some of the costs are going to the city because the water and sanitary, obviously, the lighting stuff that they're doing, and some of the supplemental stuff that goes with that water and sanitary, fixing some of the curb and some of the pavement. I don't know if somebody from the city wants to answer that question. I don't know how you guys handle that.
Water and sanitary will not be assessed.
Not be assessed, okay.
The utility picks up that cost.
Okay.
If it's sidewalk repair because of a lateral going to your property, we will also pick that up.
Okay. So.
Utility side, there's no cost.
Okay, so it's good to know. So really,
So the curbs and gutters are covered too then, right?
By the state.
That's part of the DOT project.
yeah,
I'll say the only
unless they're, yeah,
Assessment would be if the city decides to replace that sidewalk
all of it.
from Vine Street to Lake Malibu, outside of the utility and the state, which is about 50% of the sidewalk replacement. If the city does go ahead and replace the remaining portion of that sidewalk, that would be assessed at 50%. But that portion of the project is going to be dependent upon the pricing that we get back, the funding that we have available, that fiscal year, that type of thing. So that's kind of may or may not happen at this point. But
Yeah.
if it does, the city does have
And
the
I think that's
option
where I mentioned we were going to do an alternate bid on that. So it may get replaced, it may not, half of it. And if the city ultimately decides to do that, you're saying that part would be
A
assessed.
typical sidewalk assessment is, it ranges anywhere from $100 to $300 typically.
Yeah.
So,
How much?
oh boy, who's writing this all down? 100 to 1,000.
Is that for what?
Not for floods, no.
Okay. Well, thank you. We're all around here for a while. Obviously, if you want to answer or talk, we can answer any of your questions. We're here another half an hour. The second presentation will start. If you really enjoyed this presentation and like to hear it again, you're welcome to stay. So thank you. Excuse me. I think we're gonna start a few minutes early. I know the letter said the presentation's at 7:30, but it looks like there's I don't know if everybody's here, but if somebody comes in late, I'll catch them up afterwards one-on-one. But there was some confusion at the last meeting. People got here at 5 and thought it started at 5 and didn't start till 5:30. So I don't want to keep you guys all night. So we're going to start a few minutes early. And again, if somebody comes in, we'll try to catch them up. If that's okay with everybody.
The letter said 7.
It says 7 to 9 open house, and then down at the last paragraph it says presentation at 7:30. So I just wanted to. And that's why it wasn't clear should have made it clearer in the letter, or bolded it or something, highlighted. But anyway, so we're going to start a few minutes early. So again, I want to start by saying thank you. Welcome everybody to the Highway 35 public informational meeting. I appreciate your time coming here to listen to us. This is the second of 3 planned public information meetings that we have on this project. We're here tonight to talk about Highway 35 or 2nd Street from Front Street up to North End Road. So the way the letter had said, we're doing the same presentation as we did at 5 o'clock. So it's the same presentation twice. So last time there were some people from North Hudson and Hudson people, and maybe there's some here too. So we're going to do the same thing both times. So you'll hear, in general, you're going to hear what everybody heard the first time. There is a sign-up sheet in the back. Please sign up. You can take, there's also a comment form and some general information on the project. If you get on that sign-up sheet, we'll make sure you get on our mailing list. We currently, when we sent out letters to all property owners along the project corridor, everybody that butts up to 35 got a letter. Or if you were at the last meeting, your name was on our list too. So please sign in, take a comment form. You can leave the comment forms in the little tray in the back, or you can send them to us. There's an address or email on there. You can do that after the meeting if you want to put your thoughts down. But we'll get started. And again, like I said, hopefully most people are here, even though we're starting a little early. But so we've got I should start out introductions. My name's Jeff Abramson. I'm a project manager with Ayers Associates. We're the engineering firm that's been hired by the Wisconsin DOT to develop plans for this segment of road. I got Mark Peterson, one of my design engineers, Brad Becker with CBS Squared, one of the sub-consulting engineers that's working for us. Mohammed is the project manager for the DOT, and Bill in the back is his boss at the DOT. So welcome again, everybody. Thank you for coming. We've got some exhibits around the room. The big long exhibits kind of start at the south end of the project. Front Street is down here with the interstate, then front by the wastewater treatment plant, and it goes north as you go around the room, all the way up to the bridge and then into North Hudson to the North End Road. We've got some displays of typical section, of a detour route, of some other things. We'll go through the presentation. Feel free to ask questions. Last time people asked questions. We want to keep it pretty informal. People ask questions whenever. If you have a question, raise your hand, we'll address it. And then at the end, we'll have time to go one-on-one if people want to look specifically at their property or where they're at. We'll have time afterwards. So with that, we'll get started. I already did introductions. I should have had that up, I guess, when I talked. State Trunk Highway 35, the project overview. We're going to talk about the need for the project, proposed project, how we're going to maintain traffic, what the schedule is, and then open it up for questions. So there's a copy of this in the handout. I know it's hard to read up here, but basically there are 5 projects we're talking about today. It gets a little confusing just because there's different funding sources and different things that are going on, but there's 5 projects. So in general, the first project is what we're calling the Southerly Project. This is this big long map. This starts at Front Street and goes up to Vine. So this goes through the downtown business district in Hayward. That's one project. Within that project, there's some safety funds that are allocated for doing some work at the Dairy Queen intersection of Cooley and Buckeye there. Second project from Vine Street up to the bridge. Third project is the back wall. That's from the bridge up to North End Road. That's all in North Hudson on that last piece. So, and then that piece from the very, very north, from Summers up to North End, it's like 830 feet. That's got some special funding in it too, so that's just this little piece at the end. If you were here at the first public meeting about a year, or wasn't quite a year ago, but that first public meeting, that was not part of the project. That has gotten added on. The department has gotten some safety funds to address some issues up there, so that piece is added on. That's new, but we'll talk about that as we go through. Need for the project. Obviously, the pavement's in pretty poor condition through the majority of the corridor. You've got some aged utilities, quite old, water, sanitary. Storm sewer is old. There's some storm sewer that's not adequately sized. Safety, throughout the whole project corridor, curb ramps, we want to get updated to the current standards for curb ramps. As I mentioned, we have some safety funds at the intersection of Cooley and Buckeye. I'll get into that in a little bit. We have substandard vertical clearance under the railroad, which is just south of the bridge. So we're going to be doing some work on the road there. And then, again, as I mentioned, between Summers and North End, there's been a lot of rear end crashes there, people turning into those businesses and the gas station. So we're going to do something up there to try to address some of those issues. So the proposed project, I'm going to start out by talking about the South Project, which is from Front to Vine. That project, when I say the typical section, I mean the makeup of the road. The typical section, it's a 12-foot lane, a 4-foot shoulder, 2-foot gutter pan, curb and gutter, and then sidewalk. On that project, the typical section is going to remain the same. We're not widening the project out. On that South Project, the only thing that's really changing is at the intersection of Cooley and Buckeye. Like I said, there is some work being done there that's going to impact the curb line. But in general, the curb lines are going to be the same, and I'll get into what we're actually doing on each project in a second. On the North projects, so from Vine to the river and the river to North End in the town of Village of Hudson, excuse me, that typical section will remain the same almost everywhere. There is one exception under the railroad overpass. Right now it's wider. We're going to narrow it up a bit to be able to provide some on-street bike through there. So I'll touch on that in a minute. So there is a profile change under the railroad. And then the typical section from Summers to North End, that's that safety project I mentioned. That's a 2-lane rural roadway now, so 2-lane with gravel shoulders. We're making that a 3-lane, 2 to a 3, and I'll touch on that as we get going here. So this is just kind of a picture, just a graphical representation of what I'm talking about. But in general, we've got our 12-foot lanes. In the parking areas, it's 6 foot of pavement plus a 2-foot gutter gives you an 8-foot wherever there's parallel parking. That's mostly within Hudson. And then in North Hudson, it's typically a 12-foot with a 4 in your 2 gutter pan. The 4 isn't big enough to allow parallel parking, but that does technically provide on-street bike accommodations. And then the existing sidewalks. So, the scope of work that we're looking at doing out here, the south project is a joint repair from the beginning of the project at Front Street, so that's concrete pavement down there. From Front Street up to Cooley, it's going to be a joint repair, so it means we're fixing the bad joints. We're going to cut them out, fix them, pour new concrete there. There's some work being done at the intersection, safety improvement at Buckeye, and I'll show that in a second. And then from Buckeye up to Vine through the downtown business district, that is going to be a coarse grind and overlay. So we're going to come up and grind the surface, take a couple inches off the surface, smoothen it out, and then it'll be overlaid. Along that project, the curb ramps are going to be upgraded. Okay. The curb and gutter and sidewalk is going to remain in place on that southerly project, except at curb ramps. So at the curb ramps, we put in new standards, which are flat, a little bit flatter slope, and they have those domed warning fields on them. They're usually painted bright yellow. Those will get replaced at everywhere there's a crosswalk with a curb ramp. So sidewalk will have to get replaced at those, and then also the curb and gutter in front of them. But in general, on the south project, the curb and gutter and sidewalk are remaining, except for those areas we need to fix. The city is doing some sanitary work down by their wastewater treatment plant. So there's the northbound lanes are going to be impacted down here by some of the sanitary work. So there is a segment down south by the treatment plant that will get new pavement on it because of that utility work. And then also through the downtown, the city is also going to be replacing some of the lighting. There's existing street lighting there, but they're going to put some new lighting, replace or upgrade, not upgrade, but just replace some of the older lighting. This is a little difficult to see, but the safety improvement project at the intersection of Cooley and Buckeye. When you're looking at this map, this corner right here is the Dairy Queen. Okay, so north is to my right, or to your right. Dairy Queen's here. So what we are doing on that intersection, there's some islands out, some long, skinny, narrow islands out, and they kind of make the left turn lanes offset. We're going to remove those islands so we can line up the left turns. So when you're making a left turn, the person straight across from you is making a left turn. It really improves the safety of that intersection, and it lines the lanes up the way they should be. So at that intersection, we're going to line up those left turn lanes by removing these little, it's hard to see them in here, but there's these little islands that are out here. And then we're also extending that right turn lane. There's a northbound right turn lane that goes past the Dairy Queen. We're going to lengthen that back to give a little more storage there. So that's the extent of the safety work that's going on at that intersection. And then new traffic signals will be put in at that intersection as well. On the next two projects, so it's the city of Hudson from Vine to the river, or to the bridge, and then North Hudson from the bridge up to Summers. Those are what we call reconstruct projects. So those are getting a whole new pavement structure. So that means we're tearing out the existing asphalt and underlying concrete and putting a new pavement structure in. Along with that, that's getting new utilities put in. Utilities means water, sanitary, and storm sewer. So the city of Hudson and the village of North Hudson are putting water and sanitary in. Main trunk lines and then laterals out to the property lines. Not up to houses, out to the property lines. Okay? With that work, there's going to be new curb and gutter installed. So all new curb and gutter. It's going to be a concrete pavement. Sidewalks are going to remain, potentially, most likely remain. Nice tune. They're going to remain, except for crosswalks that I mentioned. You know, when we replace the curb ramps at these crosswalks, we have to go back a panel or two to make the correct slope. It's got to be a little flatter slope. And then there's some driveways that also have some steep, you probably hit on some of your driveways. We're going to try to fix the grade on some of those. So we're going to be replacing some sidewalk panels at the curb ramps, at some selected driveways, at some areas where the trees have busted it. And then where the city or the village is going to be making connections of water and sanitary, they're also going to have to replace a few panels at every one of those locations. So when you add that up, it comes to about half of the sidewalk on those two north projects is going to get replaced. The intent is we are going to bid it, when we bid it to a contractor, we're going to bid it as two different options. Replace just what's required, what we're showing due to the utility work, due to the curb ramp work, due to the driveway work. And the second option would be to replace all the sidewalk. So the City of Hudson requested that we look at that, so we'll probably bid it out that way for the entire project, and then Hudson and North Hudson will have to make a determination if they want to do that or not. But as of right now, we're only spot replacing where it needs to be. But we are going to bid the option out, at least so we have that option. Profile modification at the railroad overpass, which is in Hudson, just south of the bridge. We need to provide 14.5-foot clearance. It's like 1310 or 1311 right now. So we are going to be lowering the profile a little bit through there in order to get that vertical separation from the bottom of that structure. Traffic signals, I mentioned Cooley is going to be getting new signals, and then Monroe, which is in North Hudson, is going to get upgraded signals. And then, like I said, all new pavement, and it'll be gravel and then concrete pavement on those north projects. Yes?
When you talked about replacing the sidewalks, and the bid has an option to replace or
Yep.
not to replace.
Yep.
What determines if we want to replace? The budget constraints or?
Yeah, it's realistically, it's going to be a fiscal. The department, the DOT, the Department of Transportation, has to replace select pieces of sidewalk due to what we need to do for curb ramps and what we need to do for some of these driveways. Either the city or the village is going to be participating in this as a cost. They're going to be having to pay for the portion of sidewalk that they disturb with their water and sanitary. And then it's going to be up to the city, city or village, depending on where we're at, if they want to take on that additional cost to replace all of the sidewalk.
So it'd be a village expense to replace
Correct.
the sidewalk?
To replace it. I mean, well, over and above what is responsibility of the DOT based on what I just said. Yep. As I mentioned, in general, the typical section, the width of the road, it's either the south project is about 40, other than it's 4-lane down by the treatment plant, but through the downtown area where there's parking, it's 40-foot wide from face of curb to face of curb. Through the residential area in Hudson, it's 40-foot wide from face of curb to face of curb. Then you go across the bridge, North Hudson's 36-foot wide face of curb to face of curb. So the 40-foot wide accommodates parallel parking. It's wide enough to have a car parked there. But technically, it's not wide enough to have a car parked, and there's no room for on-street bicyclists or bikes. The 36-foot wide lets you have a 12-foot lane, 4-foot shoulder, and 2-foot gutter. So it's not wide enough for a parked car, but it's wide enough to allow bikes on it. So I'll get into that in a little bit when I talk about bike and pedestrian accommodations, but that's kind of the difference between the 36-foot and the 40-foot wide. One has parking and one doesn't. But we're not planning on changing what's out there today, with the exception in Hudson from River Street underneath that railroad overpass to the bridge. Right now that's 40 foot and it does accommodate parking. We're going to that is going to be changed to a 36 foot. So it's actually getting narrowed 2 feet on each side. It's narrowed. And we're lowering it roughly up to a foot, worst case, I think, to get that clearance under the bridge. But what that allows us to do is have the on-street bike in Hudson is going to parallel on First Street. So there'll be on-street bicycle route, and it'll come out on River Street. And then if we make that from River to the bridge, a 36 foot, that'll accommodate bikes too. So by doing that, it also gives us a little bit of room. When we lower that profile, if we lower that road, currently the sidewalk is butted right up tight to the back of curb there, and then those big retaining walls are right up tight to that. There's no room. If we move it in 2 feet, then that lets us lower this, but it also then lets us to make a little slope here to make up that foot that we had to lower the road. Because the existing sidewalk and those big retaining walls are going to stay, they're remaining. We're not planning on replacing retaining walls out here.
Will that difference drop that foot, like that slope will go that foot you're dropping the road? I mean.
Well, your driving lane is out here, this 12 feet.
Yep.
You'll have a 4 foot here, this gutter is 2 foot, 6 inch curb head, and then it'll slope up.
I'm talking about the elevation that it's going to, because you're going to drop the road a foot, let's say.
At the worst case, right under the bridge, yeah.
Under the bridge, and so from where the sidewalk is to where that slope, the bottom of the slope's going to be, is going to be a foot over 2 feet. I mean, that's a pretty steep.
And that's why we don't show it on here, but for about 75 to 100 feet roughly underneath that, we'll have to put a railing on that sidewalk, a pedestrian rail. It's not shown on here, but that, just due to that, you're right, it's about a 1 foot drop in 2 feet, which is about a 45-degree angle. So we do have to put a rail. Question in the back. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm supposed to tell everybody that when you do ask questions, there's a microphone, because they are recording this or recording/broadcasting, and they can't hear unless somebody talks into the mic.
If you put a handrail there.
It's not working. Just talk loud.
If you put a handrail there, how do we propose clearing the snow on that narrower sidewalk? Because right now, they come along.
The sidewalk's not going to be narrower. We're not replacing that sidewalk.
So they come along and they drive up the road and scoop it out with a blade, and then they scoop it up behind.
They'll have to do something different. They won't be able to pull it out.
Just random thought
We
in my head.
talked about that earlier with the city. They're going to have to change the way they snowplow for that roughly 75 to 100 feet on either side of the. It's on both sides of the road there, so yeah, that is a concern.
Is it possible to put that slope on the retaining wall side so you don't have to do the railing? I know that would move people closer to the traffic, but there is that bike lane there. That way you wouldn't have to put a railing in.
It's doable, but it's not what we want to do. We don't want to remove that sidewalk in front of those walls. We don't really know what's underneath those walls or how they're held up.
From the existing retaining wall, your draft.
We have a feeling those retaining walls may come down and tie underneath that sidewalk. Yeah, I mean, you're right. You could, instead of putting the slope right here, you could put a little slope up here. That is an option. You're right. I guess we didn't think about that just due to the fact that we didn't want to touch that sidewalk in front of those retaining walls for.
Slope would be better than a rail.
Yeah. We'll make a note of that. We'll look at that. Yes, another question up here.
I've been really alarmed on more than one occasion by seeing a family, mom and her buggy is an example, and 2 kids, probably under 8 years of age, racing down that hill, not the mom and her buggy, but the kids. And that's what happens on that sidewalk down the hill.
Yeah.
I don't care what you do with bike lanes. I'm glad you're putting bike lanes in, but that mom and her kids aren't going to be in that bike lane. So that needs to be safe for moms and their buggies and their 2 small children.
Yep. Well, and again, that's why we can't have that steep drop off that would force people, if they went off the edge, out not into traffic, but close to traffic, you know, so that's why we have to do something there with, that's why we were proposing a rail. Anyway, let me get back to where I was. I backtracked here. So we talked about changing that typical section from River Street up to the bridge to remove that parking. So that last couple blocks there from River to the bridge would go into that 36-foot. Tree removal, that's been a big question. You know, there's a lot of trees that are busting up sidewalk and busting up curb. There is going to be tree removal out here. There's no getting around it. I mean, there's a lot of nice trees, but in order to rip, you know, when we need 2 feet behind the curb and gutter for a paving machine to be able to pour that curb and gutter, and a lot of those trees are going to be hitting that. So there is going to be quite a few trees that are going to be removed as part of this. So it is going to really change the look out here. We are planning on looking at different tree plantings afterwards to put new trees back in, but just want to be upfront with everybody. There are a lot of trees that are going to be removed here. Then also on the bridge itself, the bridge is going to get a polymer overlay, which is kind of like a coarse epoxy that gets put on it. It's a preventive maintenance thing on the bridge to help protect the surface and helps keep the salt from getting down into the concrete. So that's going to happen on that bridge.
How long did it take to do
That just took probably a couple weeks.
And you plan to close the bridge for a couple of weeks?
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. Just wait. We got some slides on that. We're ready for you. Okay, then the last project is up in the village from Summers to North End Road, which is, like I said, roughly 850 feet. There's some safety funding there. There's been a lot of rear end crashes there for people turning into the restaurant and businesses, gas station and such along the side, on the east side. So what we are going to do, we are going to make that, instead of a 2-lane rural cross section, we're going to make it a 3-lane section. So we're widening as you're going north to the right, which is your east, we're widening to the east, and we're going to make that a 3-lane. So 1 lane in each direction. The center lane is going to be what we call a 2-way left turn lane, a twiddle. So it's going to allow people that want to make a left turn, if they're heading southbound, make a left turn into any of those businesses. You'll be able to pull out of traffic and not back up traffic. That really should help eliminate all those rear end crashes. So that is the safety improvement project that's happening up there, is making that a 3-lane with a twiddle. And that new side, that right side, east side, will have curb and gutter on it. The left side, or the west, will look just like it does today. It's just it'll be a gravel shoulder. And then that segment, that 800 and some feet, will be milled. We'll mill up the asphalt and overlay it, pave it with new asphalt. We'll pave it at the same time we pave that widening, so it'll all look the same, and the striping and everything will work out. So that project is getting a mill and overlay, and then widening, which would be a new pavement structure on the east side. Bike and pedestrian accommodation. So obviously there's existing sidewalk through most of the project. There's a segment up the north end of the project, that north and east side, where there is no sidewalk. But in general, there's sidewalk the majority of the corridor, and that sidewalk is going to remain where it's at today, with the exception of a piece at Cooley here. Coming into Cooley, it tapers in, and it's right behind the curb and gutter, right up tight to the road. We're going to bend it out and keep it away from traffic, make a boulevard there. And the bike trail comes from down under the interstate, comes up past the marina, and then turns on Buckeye. And then from there, we're going to have on-street bike all the way up to River, and then turn and come out on River. And that's where we're narrowing up to 36 foot from River to the north, and then that accommodates bikes. And we are also looking at an option of widening widening this to an 8-foot asphalt path instead of a 5-foot concrete. Another question?
I'm assuming you're not going to be messing with any of the downtown sidewalks? Is that accurate?
In general, the sidewalks are going to remain, with the exception of curb ramps. Where we replace curb ramps, we typically have to do a panel or two. And in the downtown area, the city is looking at replacing the bases from the light poles, the bases for the lighting. So there's going to be some work at the light bases. But in general, yeah, we're not replacing the sidewalk in the downtown area.
So they won't be impinged on in any way, except for those, what you just said?
Yeah, that's the only, that's the rest of the sidewalk will remain in place. That's just the lighting and just the curb ramps. And one thing I did not mention, there's 2 displays, one at Locust Street and one at Wisconsin Street. So Locust and Wisconsin are in the rehab area, the first part. We are looking at putting, the city has requested us to put some bump outs, which are, so you've got your parking. Right now the parking can go right up to the intersection. What they do is we'll bend that curb out and make a little bulb to kind of pull that parking away. And it really shortens up the distance for pedestrians to cross. So we're looking at 2 intersections with bump outs. And then on the next segment, the Reconstruct segment at St. Croix, we're looking, St. Croix is a heavy pedestrian crossing as well. At St. Croix, we're looking at putting some median longitudinal, right on center line, some long islands out there, kind of like a pedestrian refuge. So people only have to cross halfway, and then they're in a raised median, and then they'll cross the other way. Right now, there's some push buttons there that push button, flashers for when pedestrians want to cross. But that's a pretty heavy pedestrian crossing, so we're looking at improving the safety there by adding some median island refuge out in the middle. Your question?
Questions about lane markings. You mentioned that in North Hudson it will be capable of having a bike or a bike path.
On-street bike.
On street.
Yes.
Will that be marked with a white line and possibly the bike signs?
I don't know. We haven't gotten that far. I don't know if it accommodates bikes, and we talked about some signing, to direct people. There's probably going to be needed some signing down at Cooley to direct people to one block off, which is first for the on-street bike. But that's something we need to look at. We haven't gotten that far as laying out pavement markings yet. Yeah, we do have a 3rd meeting coming up, so at that final meeting we have to have all these ironed out. But typically we probably don't put pavement marking on it. Bike signs, you know what I mean, on the road.
And it's not a bike shoulder if you don't.
If
it's not marked, it's not safe.
Bikes, yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's definitely a possibility, I guess.
I would assume underneath the railroad crossing, that definitely would be marked.
Yeah. Well, that whole North Hudson's the same width. It's 36, so
right.
You've got a 4-foot shoulder and a 2-foot gutter that on both sides of the road. So, yeah. Why don't we just jot that? Mark,
I have something.
just write that down. Gotta go now.
Yeah, I would agree that if you're going to say that there are bike lanes there, they should be marked.
And we can address that. That's not a big issue, but we haven't gotten that far yet.
And the other thing, I did have another question, is on St. Croix Street, you have a push button for crossing the street?
Yep.
And
It's not.
Yes, there is. Yes.
2 people say no.
I thought this was the North Hudson information section.
It is.
As I said to begin with, we're doing the same presentation twice because there were people from North Hudson at the first one and vice versa. But
the questions are all regarding Hudson right now.
I'm sorry, I can't help that. But yeah, St. Croix has ped crossings. I got pictures of them.
Okay. And my other question is, if that is unsafe enough, because that's a safe routes to school route, and there are a lot of kids that cross there, to have that island there, could the signage, or could there be a traffic light or something a little more
we're not
imposing than
planning.
that
It doesn't
button?
meet requirements to have a traffic signal. We're not gonna put a new signal there. We are gonna, the push buttons will still be remaining and new crosswalks put in. But, okay, we'll keep going here. So we talked about the bike on street, so we talked about that. Maintenance of traffic. Southern project, bi-directional traffic. So that's the one that's getting mill and overlay. So, and there's also some utility work on the south end. So that project, we are milling, or excuse me, flopping traffic back and forth, maintain one direction each way. It will kind of look like this. During when that happens, the parking won't be parking because we'll be driving in the parking lane and paving one side. The good thing about that is that's a pretty short time frame. Doesn't take them long to mill that. This utility work down here is going to take longer because it's a big open trench for that sanitary. But since there's 4 lanes, we can still have 1 lane in each direction down here. And then through the downtown, we'll still have 1 lane in each direction. But that is a shorter time period. That construction doesn't take as long. The project, the north 2 projects, technically the north 3, the road is closed. There is a signed detour route. It's over on this. It's using at Vine Street, which is W. The official signed detour route is W to A to E. We have to sign, just let me finish here, please. We have to sign a detour route. This is a state highway, so we have to sign a detour route on a county trunk highway or above level. We can't sign it on town roads. I know there's a lot of parallel routes here that locals will probably use, but that is going to be the official detour route. We want to get as much through traffic out of here. Now, I want you guys to remember there's utility work going in here, sanitary and water, that's probably, some of it's 20 foot deep, okay? So 20 foot deep, you've got a pretty big wide trench. It's probably half the road that's going to be disturbed. You know we have to make access or provide access to businesses and residents, but we want to get the through traffic out. Okay, so I want to preface this by saying this, I'm going to preface this by saying this is under consideration here. We know we have to close the bridge to do the polymer overlay, okay? We don't want like I said, all the through traffic going through here with this deep open cut trenches. It's a safety issue, we can't do it. We are going to look at doing the first 2 blocks south of the bridge and the 1 block north of the bridge. Doing that first right away. That's still got the deep utilities. It is going to have to be closed. The bridge work and the 2 blocks south, the 1 block north, close it, get that work done, and then invest. And then if we did that, then we could have the potential of opening that back up and letting access across the bridge. Because you've got First Street that parallels it from River, which is 2 blocks back, and then 1 block on the north side of the bridge, you can hang left and be on the truck route. So I want to make sure I preface this. This is something we just, at the first meeting, we told everybody that it was going to be closed, okay? And we know that's a big inconvenience for a lot of people. So we are looking at seeing if there's a way, the department is going to discuss it internally and see if there's a way we can do the construction staging so that we can close it for a short period and then open it up. Shorter than the whole construction season. Short period, you're talking 3-4 blocks with the utilities. We could open it up to gravel. People might have to drive on gravel, which would help save because it is concrete. But you're still probably talking close to probably 4 weeks, a month. But I want you guys to realize this whole construction period is going to take most of a summer. There's a lot of utility work going on here, which takes time, and it's deep. Yes, question?
You're talking about how deep that, you're worried about how deep that the utility work is going to be. What about piling sheets? piling sheathings, and you don't have to, you can pile those down along the edge of your cut line, and you can go as deep as you want.
Yeah, you could, yeah. You'd probably triple the cost of this project if you did that on the length of this project. Legitimately, I mean, it is an option.
Just where you need it done and you move along.
Well, it's the whole length of the project. There's a sanitary and water main from Vine Street to the bridge, and then the bridge all the way to North Hudson, so. What's that?
You're not gonna open it up from.
No, but over the, I mean, I'm saying that the whole length needs it. It might not all be at the same time, but at some point. You know, typically they'll put a trench box in, but even with it that deep, they do have to lay the slopes back. It's just, you have to do that to get down to that level. So, like I said, the department is gonna be looking at if it's, you know, feasible to do the work that has to be done on either side of the bridge, do that right away, do it as fast as we can, and then open the bridge back up to local, and again, it's not gonna be to through traffic, it's to basically local people, you know, within the corridor.
Because we're not talking about an inconvenience here, by any means.
No.
This is not an inconvenience. We don't understand that the work has to get done, but there's ways to do this that we don't have to shut this whole thing down. I was a lancer, I'm not just coming off of, as no one has ever been in this business before. I worked for almost 30 years as a land surveyor, and I did a lot of projects like this, and
Yeah, we use sheet piling on bridges a lot for keeping up side slopes. Gotta remember, what you have exposed, there's another third in the ground. So if you got a 20-foot hole, you're probably a 30-foot sheeting for 2 miles, both sides of it. You're probably tripling the cost of the project. But, I mean, it's something we can look at, obviously.
Well, it seems to me you don't have to do it the whole length of the project. Oh.
The majority of the sanitary is deep.
Oh, I understand that. But what we're talking about, the priority being keeping that bridge open. So if you did it 2 blocks on the,
Oh, I see what you're
on the south side and 1 block
I
on the north
apologize, I thought
side.
you were talking the whole project length.
And so, and then people can use the side streets to get through. I'm sure the village is going to be happy to accommodate all of the business people on that road so we can have traffic between the 2 cities. So for the, and what we're talking about here is you're talking about the expense of the project to the state. Well, you're not talking about the cost of the project to the businesses if that bridge is closed.
No,
And
and there
so
are-
I'd rather see it come out of the state's pocket than our businesses' pockets.
Yeah, and you gotta remember, there are cost shares here, so it is coming back to the village, or the town, excuse me, village and the city as well on certain things, so. It's not, it's everybody, it's all of our money. But, got a question in the back?
At your last meeting, you said you don't want to stop visitors from visiting your downtown area. The earlier meeting, the Hudson section, the 2 hours.
Okay, yeah.
But you said you didn't want to
That's why,
stop.
it's, you know, it's bi-directional traffic down there, yeah.
Well, the whole thing is, shutting that bridge down, I've got, I don't know how many of our business owners that are here right now, and can tell you the kind of money that it's gonna cost them if they have to have, that detour is insane. I took the shortest detour to come here from the village, and it's 9 miles, and that's through the snakiest road that you're ever gonna drive on. That's what the locals are gonna be on. So now you talk safety, you're gonna talk safety of the people driving that road, and people that aren't gonna be on that road, that don't know the road, that's gonna be another safety issue. So this, you've gotta think of another way to get out of it. I mean, this bridge cannot be closed for that summer. There's just no way in hell you
Well,
can do it.
and that's why we're talking, not closing it for the summer, we're talking about looking at just closing it when we do the work on the bridge and the block, or 2 blocks on either side. But then, that's where you just brought up the, what's that?
But those are 4 lanes wide. It's a 4-lane bridge, why don't you do 2 at a time?
It's a 4-lane bridge, but it's 36 foot wide on one side of the bridge, it's 40 foot on the other side of the bridge.
It's been like that all these years, why can't it remain open?
I understand that, but that's not the,
Thousands of cars have gone over that with that 4-foot difference.
yeah, I'm not saying that we can't do bi-directional on the bridge. There's plenty of width. That's not the issue. The issue is we're trying to keep people out of it as much as we can when we got those 20-foot deep holes to put in the water and sanitary.
K-rail?
What's that?
K-rail?
K-rail.
Put K-rail in?
Guess I've never put beam guard I mean, it's closed to traffic, so other than local people that live on there, there should not be through traffic in here. But yeah, I've never put beam guard in a construction zone or K-rail. Or are you talking like precast concrete?
And Doug did it right down here on 94 last summer, when they split the lands.
Yeah. Well, again, I want to emphasize that this is ongoing, okay? I mean, nothing's set in stone, and that's why during the last meeting, we talked about it, and the department, the DOT, is going to look at different options of what we can do here. So I want to emphasize that.
You need to realize, not you, the state of Wisconsin needs to realize what you will do to North Hudson. Like, just as general for business, you will kill 25 to 30% of those businesses there. You don't know that because you're not here, but there's so many people from Hudson that just come over here just for the little businesses that won't survive. So if the state of, or Madison, want to kill a town, that is what it's gonna do. If you can't figure a way out. I mean, I've already talked to you, and it's, for me, just that 6 months, just deliveries, that's $100,000. That it will be out of my pocket. That I have to somehow make up. That's not counting people that come to my business. I mean, there's gotta be something we can work. Even 4 weeks is better than
Oh, absolutely.
7 months or whatever it is.
Well, it won't be 7, but yeah.
But it won't be 4 either. It's gonna be 2 months, because nothing runs on time.
Yeah, there's weather. What if you get weather?
We got a question over here.
How long is this whole project supposed to last? From start at Front Street all the way up to Summers? How long do you estimate this, given good weather? I've been in Florida and I've seen Florida construction time, and it ain't like ours.
No, I know.
But it is definitely can be affected tremendously by weather and other conditions.
We're probably looking at most of a construction season, probably a good solid 4 months. The south project can go whenever. That doesn't have as much water and sanitary. It's got a little bit. So that can be going on when one of those other ones goes. But part of what we want to do is also limit the contractor. We don't want them to tear the whole project up at once. We can say we're going to do this segment and then this segment and then this segment. So the intent is not to have this whole corridor torn up at one time.
During your consideration of the businesses in North Hudson, think about the employees as well. Each of those businesses employs around 30 people. The impact that it takes on them and their household, their drive to and from work, those are all factors that I want the state to consider for us to go forward with this project. We realize it needs to be done, but the truth is, the village needs to survive.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Thank you. I'm the chief of police for the village of North Hudson, and I guess not to jump back to the bridge aspect, but for the potentially 1 month, will there be any, I guess, consideration for emergency vehicles? We, have a small agency for fire, EMS, other law enforcement to back us up. Will there be any consideration on that?
Yeah, we're planning. We know we have to allow EMS, emergency services across. So once you may be driving in some nasty areas, but the epoxy overlay on the bridge is only a week to 2 week process, and we can do it half at a time. So there'll be barricades across the bridge, but they can be moved for emergency services.
You're worried about driving in nasty areas. I mean, did you drive around the highway project you guys did last year on the freeway? There was plenty of nasty areas out there.
No, and every construction project is. I think some people don't realize when you dig a 20-foot hole, it's not 2 feet wide on the top, it's 20 feet wide on the top, which is most of a lane. Yep. No, there is, and that's why they'll have to use trench boxes, which are probably 8 feet wide when they install it, just for the safety of the workers. Structure, construction timing, okay. So, the schedule, we had a PIM last year. There's an environmental document that's done for these type of projects that's due this summer. We're in April 19 right now for the second PIM. There's been a preliminary right-of-way plat done. And there is some, I guess I did forget to talk about the real estate. There is some, at some of these curb ramps, we are gonna have to get some temporary easements just to blend the curb ramps in, around the corners at the intersections. So there is gonna be some temporary easements that'll be required, primarily just for these curb ramps. Also at a few driveways. We're trying to improve a few driveways. So there may be some easements that are required at some driveways to help blend those in. We're planning on another PIM end of the year, beginning of 20, and that one will have what we probably will consider close to final plans. We've got what we consider probably a 60% plan level right now, but a lot of these details will get worked out now in the final stages. And our final plans are due to the DOT in May of 20, so a little over a year from now. And then it'll be bid out to a contractor late in 20 for a 2021 construction. So it's 2021, so it's two years from now.
We have had a number of business owners here speak to the fact that we in North Hudson are looking at the possible death of our businesses. And I don't know if you've ever run a business or tried to raise a family, excuse me, on the income that you get from a business. I went to work this morning at 9 o'clock. I came here at 7 o'clock from that same business. My husband and I do that day in and day out. And when you say, with a calm face, I understand, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. And this, a construction season project can bury us, and you can say, I understand. But when you say that, I don't think you do. It's not just the death of a business here and there, which is serious enough in and of itself, but it's our whole community of North Hudson that you're standing there going, I understand. Unless you've run your own business, sir, in an area that's affected by the traffic in and out, I don't think you do. And I don't think the state does. And I don't know that this is going to change your mind one way or the other. But there has to be a better way than to close off the access to our community for a construction season. And when you say a 4-month construction season, we watched that project on the interstate last from spring until well into the late fall. That is a long construction season. It was longer than 4 months.
Yeah, and that's, and you're right, with weather too, things can get extended. It could go, there's a lot of utility work here that takes a long time. So yeah, it could end up being a 5 or 6 month construction season.
And we're supposed to do what?
No, I'm just saying, that it's a big project. It's gonna take a long time to build this. And then again, that's why the department is gonna go back and discuss this internally and see what can be done. And I'm not speaking for Mohammed and Bill, but they understand that we need to look at this. So, any other questions?
I have a comment. Actually, I hear the issues with North Hudson, but it's also it will impact Hudson too, because people don't just come from the south to go to Hudson. So this is an issue that needs to get serious consideration. If the bridge is closed, it's going to be hard for people to get from the north into Hudson. We cross over that way going north and south all the time. So.
Okay. Point taken. And again, I want to say thank you. I mean, we do really appreciate these comments, because this is what we need to hear and what we want to hear from you guys. So We're going to do everything we can to try to minimize what happens out here. And again, that's why the department's taking a step back and looking at this again. So and that's just because of your guys' comments today. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, we're here for another hour basically. So if you want to come up and look at individual projects, again, thank you for coming.